Early on, I was a very creative person and was really into the fine arts. And as I was going through college, I was learning design and how to, just traditional graphic design. But the web was kind of just like bursting at the seams, and the school that I was going to was not, acting quickly enough. Like there weren't enough classes around this. And so what happened was I reached out to a friend of mine.
Hey listeners, welcome to Soul in the Game podcast. This is Soumya, your host, and today we have Nate Cadillac. He is also a podcaster at Plan Your Next. He talks about entrepreneurship and design. We discuss his journey through entrepreneurship and design and utilizing internet for his experiments. Finally, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe and enjoy the talk.
All right. Yay. Awesome. Nate, welcome to Soul in the Game podcast. I'm very excited to be hosting another podcaster. You're the first guest who is already doing a podcast and you have your own channel. So I'm very excited to have this amazing conversation with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, you're very kind. So for listeners, I know Nate probably 3 weeks. That's it. I didn't
Yeah,
know you before that.
that's right.
I met you in Minimal Entrepreneurs course that's created by Sahil, and it's been an amazing journey to know so many amazing entrepreneurs or people who are starting to become entrepreneurs, such as me. The best thing I've learned is people thinking process of entrepreneurs, how they have to navigate through so many things and keep changing the ideas and then go back and forth and evaluate. And the support system is awesome, really, really good. I love the feedback, and any question that's being put there, we get instantly so many people responding. So I really like that. And I'm so glad that also got to know you through that, because you have this podcast going and you're also a designer. So why don't you tell more about yourself, Nate, to our listeners?
Sure. And yes, I am having a blast going through the course. I think the idea of a community first led product or business is really interesting. And so it's fascinating to connect with people like you. So I am a product designer by day. I am, I, let's see here. Early on, I was a very creative person and was really into the fine arts. And as I was going through college, I was learning design and how to, just traditional graphic design. But the web was kind of just like bursting at the seams, and the school that I was going to was not, acting quickly enough. Like there weren't enough classes around this. And so what happened was I reached out to a friend of mine and asked him if he would mentor me. And he said yes. And he was doing web design during that time. And so I quit college and essentially started working kind of as an apprentice for my mentor, and did that for 2 years and learned how to code and design for the web. And so that sort of just kickstarted my career. And since then I've been designing mobile apps, websites, web apps, a lot, pretty much everything under the sun for 15 plus years. And I got the entrepreneurial itch around 2008 when the iPhone came out, and started building my own mobile apps and just collaborating with friends. And so now I work for a company called HomeSpotter, and we design digital tools for real estate agents and brokers. And so I do a lot of the user interface, user experience design for HomeSpotter. And like you, like during this course, I'm thinking about what to build on the side. And I really love this idea that as an entrepreneur or a creator, you can have multiple revenue streams, whether you're working a full-time job and building something on the side, or whether you're just building something on the side but having a couple of projects going, I think is really interesting in the world we live in right now. And that's just completely fascinating. So that's why I'm in the minimalist entrepreneurs course.
Right. Yeah. And being, creators economy, that's which Sahil's platform, that's Gumroad, provides. I think we are all gravitated because of that idea. And the platform provides the same thought process, or at least the foundation of that is a similar thinking, where we are all, that's the basis. We are all on the same page to start with, but we all building different products and promoting ourselves. And there is so much uncomfortable feeling, especially for somebody like me who is very new in this space, to push myself, to sell or to market, or to even think through, we put our own limitations. Okay, I cannot think like that, but I have to, in this case I have to think that way. I'm very uh, excited to read about, I was just reading about your bio, and then you were like very hard on the community space, like hard as in you very promote that
Hmm.
community is first, right? The building together, and
Yeah.
rather than just being a solo thing, you like collaborating and working together. So how do you see that in the business, that in the creator economy, or having this different projects that we are all working together? How do you think we can collaborate on that? Because it's very organic process, right? It's not somebody is coming and telling, okay, you two work together here. And how we met also about the podcast, it was very organic. Just we started talking, and then, okay, let's create something here together. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny because I don't feel that I've always been this way. I think a designer's mindset, I don't want to generalize too much, but I think a lot of people who are good with a certain craft tend to want to work alone. They tend to want to go into a vacuum or a cave and just design and kind of pull out the craft or the deliverable and hold it into the light like it's some magic thing, and so early on in my career, I was really the complete opposite. And so you're absolutely right. Like the way that I think now has completely changed. I believe that you can have more fun collaborating. You can meet more people. You can think outside the box a little bit of your own mind, because when you're designing or you're creating by yourself, you're just sort of like your own customer in a lot of ways. Unless you're talking to a lot of people or collaborating or just sharing the ideas that you have, it's limiting in terms of maybe how successful that thing could be. And so, to your point about how do you think about community and collaboration now? Like I tend to, if I have an idea, I think about who might be able to offset my skills in some way. And I was just talking to a person the other day about a writing project, and we were kind of like discussing maybe working in a similar space and how might we work together on it. And I'm not sure if it's actually going to pan out, but I think those conversations are really interesting early on, because you start to kind of bounce ideas off of people and see if they are sharing the same enthusiasm as you are. And without asking or without sort of putting yourself out there and being a little bit vulnerable, it's really tough to do it by yourself. So I, you know, I think it's the way to go. I think Sahil's onto something here.
Yeah, I totally see that, because when I want to probably have wanting to collaborate before, it is hard to know or have that, find the mindset. Like if you're just in this outside space and you're trying to find somebody, it's almost like dating, right?
Yeah.
You have to do a lot of trial and error method to find somebody who will match in your wavelength. But this, I think, platform provides that basis, which is okay. And I love how diverse the interests are. It's like, oh, we can complement each other, or we can, okay, I'll take care of this, tech versus sales and marketing. That's such a great combination, and that collaboration can go really well in that case. And yeah, this course is really good. We
Yeah.
are promoting. Sahil should be like, wow.
Yes, exactly. I, I mean, yeah, I think the idea of, sharing your ideas, I think Paul Graham talks a lot about how finding a founder is sort of like, being in a marriage. It's a high commitment. You have to find the perfect partner, kind of like the dating analogy you were making. And, you know, it's hard to do that when you're barely talking about it with anybody. But if you are actively talking about it with a community, with a lot of people, you start to realize like who might be the right fit if that's something you want to pursue. And so uh, that's why the intangibles of talking about your ideas a lot and participating in conversations a lot and talking about like this, like you and I are right now a lot, really helps and matters to find the right people to work with. So yeah, that's the nice, impact of all that.
Yeah, and more we talk, it feels like we are refining our own thoughts, like we are refining the way we want to think, and it comes out, it gets better and better as we communicate about it more. um, so I wanted to ask you about your recent podcast. I did
Hmm.
mention that podcast as in actually your newsletter. Let's go to your newsletter first.
Oh, sure.
That it's lovely that listeners, if you don't know, Nate has this amazing, super innovative idea of putting the audio in the newsletter. I've never seen anybody do that, and it saves so much time. You just click on the play button, and then you'll have like this 5 minutes of golden nuggets that Nate delivers, and I really love that. You mentioned about trial and error. Um,
Hmm.
like you're experimenting, and because you're taking a break to take time off for yourself, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, tell me more about trial and error, because I'm also exactly like that. Like I love experimenting with something, and the only thing I realized after like a chat with Sahil I was having, I don't know if you got to check that thread. It's a very nice thread on Slack.
Hmm.
I realized I'm super chaotic, and it's overlapping. Everything is overlapping, not really planning that well.
Yeah.
That's what I realized. So, yeah, tell me about your trial, and I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I think I'll have to go back and check that thread. I'm not sure if I actually saw that or not, but the idea of trial and error really resonates with me kind of early on because, like I said, I wasn't fully happy with the path that I was on, like in terms of the traditional way to learn something. So learning web design and learning how to design products, I didn't feel like school is the right path for me. And so I've always had this sort of like, you know, entrepreneurial mindset in terms of like, I think that there's a lot of different ways to get from point A to point B. Life is not linear by any means. And so pursuing, someone outside of my sphere really kind of enabled me early on to say, oh, I don't need a degree to design, like I need to learn how to actually do the things that I want to do. And in terms of what Sahil talks about, it's just start and learn later. And that's kind of the approach I took early on. And so you're gonna make a lot of mistakes in life, and if you choose not to take the traditional path, you're going to screw up all the time. And so trial and error is for me, just it hits home because I think a lot about, um, if you are taking a non-traditional path through life, you're going to have to experiment a lot. You're going to have to be creative about your decision making, and you're going to have to like get uncomfortable. And so it seems cliche, but to me, trial and error, when I was writing about that, starts to surface in a lot of different ways. So in particular, that essay was, um, I'm writing a newsletter. I'm, like you said, I'm doing an audio component to that. I'm writing, I'm illustrating, I'm doing a lot of experiments to figure out like I want to do and what sticks and what the audience likes and what I like. And so, the audio component doesn't get a lot of downloads. Like it's, you know, sometimes it does, and sometimes it's maybe 30 or 40 downloads. And then like, sometimes it's like two. So I don't really know what's working there, but I'm just consistently experimenting because I'm trying to figure out like how it makes me feel. And a friend of mine, Pranav, he talks a lot about when he watches movies, he has a hard time coming to the same sort of like outcome of whether a movie is good or bad with a friend of his. And he realized that the reason why he can't ever like agree on a film with his friend is because he looks at a movie and how it makes him feel. And his friend looks at a movie and tries to understand what the story is. And I actually think that's a really great way to look at life and just how things make you feel. And so when I'm doing creative writing or painting or illustrating, like, am I having fun doing it? And how does it make me feel inside? If it's a struggle, maybe that's not the right path. And so try something new, right? And fail again and try something else and fail again. And so, yeah, that just springs up. It's a constant like way to reflect in my mind of what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. Cause there's definitely not one way to do everything.
Yeah, I like that movie example, right? The how it makes you feel, because I think it's even in marriage, for example, right? If you're doing the same thing, we both have different perspectives on it, and
Yeah,
that
it's
might
true.
become a scenario for argument. But then
Yeah.
it's just a perspective. This is how I am thinking. This is how my husband is thinking. So, and or even with the child,
Hmm.
as the child is growing up, the child sees in a different way, and it's amazing to grow through that and having this mindset almost. Okay, we all have different perspectives, and but to your point, understanding that how we learn, right? I think that's the key. And I also tweet a lot about self-awareness in my Twitter. That's my handle for mindfulness space, where I'm just writing my thoughts on whatever awareness I learn. And this is something, as you said, I totally reflect on that we have to experiment, and I call it like my Saumya's experiments, because
Mm,
you call
love
trial
that.
and error same thing.
Yeah.
So I experiment. I'm like telling myself I'm experimenting with this now, because if I say if I, I've used I used to say, oh, I'm gonna try, I'll do this, and then if it doesn't work out, it was hurting me, and I would be like go in this negative cycle. Now I'm using terminology, just changing that put me in such a positive mindset. And when I say, okay, I'm experimenting with, let's say, running every day for next 1 week, and if I miss some day, it's an experiment. Okay, I know I missed. I'm not like, okay, I have to run for 10 days or 5 days and I didn't run, that's a failure. But I'm experimenting running 5 days, 10 days, and I didn't run. I'm learning why I didn't run, or can I continue learning? So I love that terminology a lot.
Yeah, that resonates so deeply with me because you need to figure out like when the days that you don't run, you need to, yeah, kind of reflect and say like, why is that? And don't beat yourself up too much about it. Just consistency is everything. So just go out the next day and deal with it then.
Yeah. And I might just even not run after 10 days. I might be like, okay, running is not for
Mm,
me, at least for now. I would want to get into weightlifting. So I might try something totally
yeah,
different. So, yeah, I like that. It's less stress for ourselves. I feel it's like stress free zone.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. Next, I wanted to talk about I really loved how you are preparing for the upcoming big event in your life. For our listeners, Nate will be dad
Hmm.
soon, April, right?
Yeah, April
April.
25th. If it
Wow.
happens on time.
Yeah, yeah. Around
Yeah,
that
around
time,
that time.
sometime in April, May. So that's a big milestone in everybody's life, and becoming a parent is a deeply changing. I mean, we change ourselves. It's like for moms and dads, we change the way we think, our responsibilities, our thought process takes like such a deep, goes into really deeper level. And you have plans to take a break, for yourself, and you mention, is that a selfish thing to do in your small audio? And I wanted to say, no, it's not a selfish thing. Actually, you're doing such an amazing job by taking a break. I love the thought process. You have planned, and then it's important period preparing for that, and you're taking time to reflect on how best dad you want to be and writing about it. So I really loved, and please don't think at all as it's a selfish thing. So yeah, I wanted to say that and
Thank you.
learn more about learn more about what your plans are, if you have.
Yeah, I think it's tough to make plans, right? Like everybody I talk to, there's a stat like I don't know, 60% of children are born much earlier than the expected date, and many stories I've heard, and it sounds like you have children. Is that right?
I have a son.
You have a
Yeah,
son. Okay.
he's 8-year-old now.
Well, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
I think the idea that everything will go to plan, I don't believe in. And so I am trying to plan for the unexpected in a way. And the reason why I took a break was to because I feel like I'm like a selfish person with my time. Just I've run my own businesses. I do, I work a full-time job, I freelance, and I'm creatively like always seeking for things. And in a way, it feels a little selfish. And so what I wanted to do was like, well, how can I create sort of a gap between Nate, who's married, but like doesn't have children, and Nate, a father, and be able to create a little bit of space that allows me to reflect on that moment as like a very transitional time in my life. So, I try to think of a great way to put this, but there's like moments in your lives like that where you have like this really great experience. And for me, I'll share like a couple. One is traveling south to Argentina and staying there for a month. And I asked my dad to come along. And so we hung out there for a few weeks together. And I think about that trip almost every other day. And there was another trip where I was taking a bike ride with a friend, 600 miles from Montreal to Buffalo. And I think about that trip almost every day. And there's these moments in your life like that where you kind of, when you're asked to just slow down and like breathe and think about a happy place, like those come to my mind like almost instantly. And I wanted something that feels very uneasy to me in my life, like having a child. I wanted a happy space to like reflect on for that. And honestly, like I'm already thinking about the time I spent, 5 days away. I was staying in Laurel Canyon, and it was just a place for me to meditate, to read, to write, and to just take some time off. Because we just live such busy lives that contrast stands out so interestingly.
I think everybody should do it, like both dads, and it's a break for the mom as well. Mom also gets to,
Yeah.
you're going alone, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so she'll also get time to reflect and think through, or yeah, just have that space. I think everybody should do that. It's so important. I remember we both went. It was it was like called Baby Moon or
We
something.
did that too. Yeah, we did a baby moon. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I do remember that trip. It is. I go back to the pictures and I see them, and it just brings so much joy because it was all that questions I had, like what happened. When I see those pictures, those questions, it reminds me of all those questions and all the insecurities or the fears I had, which have not come true now. They're all like
Mm,
they're all better and they're all different than what I thought they would be.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really great point. I think, like I said, it's hard to plan for these things. And so um, putting my mind in a space that could allow myself to think through some of the difficulties about being a father, or some of the difficulties of the pregnancy, or whatever it is, um, just kind of preparing yourself. There's this thing that I can't remember who does this, but in basketball, there's like certain players who, they'll lay down, and instead of like shooting 3-pointers, they'll imagine themselves shooting 3-pointers. And it's a way to build a skill through memory and repetition. And I don't know what the science behind this is called, but for me, it was like, can I imagine difficult moments ahead of time? And hopefully when I get to that spot, I can realize like I've almost done the reps, and we'll hopefully approach it with maybe a less chaotic like mindset. So um, what if something happens and we have to deliver early? Like I just kind of went through weird scenarios in my mind to help me think about like how am I going to react if something happens unexpectedly, and try to put in the reps, early on. And so that's some of the things, some of the thought process scenario building I did in my time away to think through like those chaotic moments. So we'll see. I'll probably still freak out, but I
Yeah,
tried.
no, I mean, it's a part of our evolution, right? We are all transformation. Or actually, it's evolution, I think, but from like single us to becoming a parent us. And you mentioned something. I'm trying to recall. I was gonna go back to that. Um, what was it? I was just thinking, okay, I'll ask you about it, and then now I'm totally blanking out on that. Uh, okay, let's move on. I'm not remembering that part now. I think when you are when you are like a dad, or before you become dad, you're thinking of all the scenarios, or even the baby birth. I think because okay, sorry, go back. I remembered. So my
Yes.
point was, you mentioned about visualization or imagination, right? And then you said memory. How I just watched a Netflix documentary yesterday about how our mind works, and it has this different parts. About one is about memory, one is about sleep, dreams, what happens when we sleep, and then one is about anxiety. Really nice, awesome documentary to just nicely with nice visuals and then nice examples. And then in the memory part, they mentioned exactly the same thing that you mentioned just now. It's, visualize something, and then you do that when that scenario happens, it doesn't feel like something new. You're not freaking out. It's like repetition. It's exact same thing you mentioned. And the reason is the same parts of the brain get illuminated, or activated. For the memory, whatever the parts are, the imagination also uses same parts of the brain, so it's the same activated part that you're reusing. So it's not freaking us out, rather than we'll be little bit calmer, and then we will be able to handle that scenario. So that's what I wanted to say when you talked about
No,
imagination.
I love that. Thank you. Because I knew there was science behind that, but I wasn't quite sure. And isn't it like if you think through the repetitions, it's almost like it's almost like you've done that, like you've built in that practice as a way to put in those reps, and it can affect you physically, and it can. Uh, sorry for the helicopter if you can hear that, but yeah, it's a really great. I've also heard that like if you go to bed thinking about that, and hopefully if you dream about these things, that's also similarly like can have the same effect.
You should watch that
I
documentary.
can't
I think
wait.
you will love that. Be- because it seems like you're like curious, just like how I was curious about these things. It doesn't go really deep, but it touches those things where you can, okay, this is why, and then maybe you can read your own article or dig deeper into that. But it's very good. It's short as well. It's about 19 minutes, less than 20 minutes, chunks of that information, and you can binge watch it if you want.
Yeah, I definitely will. You have to share
Yeah,
that with me.
it is really good. Yeah. And you will be an amazing dad, so just have no doubts about it. You did mention about being worried about how you will be, so I think you're going to be great father. We are wired to be protective of our children, and that's in our DNA. That's how we are wired as human beings. So any anxiety, it's there, but just know that you will be an amazing dad. And after talking to you and knowing that you're planning so much, it's, I think, yeah, there is no question that of not being an amazing dad.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. I'm still unsure, but we'll, I've got the best. I'm
Yeah.
very optimistic. Let's say that.
Yes. And do you have do you have a name for your daughter, or
We
not
don't.
yet?
We are going through a list of names, and every week we change it up just to kind of, you know, try it on, if you will. So yeah, we're still kind of going through that.
Yeah, it will come to you. I think the name has to come to you rather than it just suddenly it like feels okay. This is the right name for our kid, and yeah.
Yeah, it kind of feels like there's too much time, even though there's only 2 months left. It feels like there's still too much time to kind of like try different things. But once we're really close, we'll probably like, yes, that's the name. That's what her name's going to be.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's I think that's how something that's we decided for our son when we were naming. We were going back and forth, and then we finally had like 3 names shortlisted. And then we were like, okay, this is like we both agreed on one name, and we just
Just picked it.
very close to a due date. Yeah, just
Yeah.
picked it later on. Yeah. Now I want to go back to our initial discussion about how entrepreneurial and you said you started all by yourself, and then you didn't really fit in that traditional school
Hmm.
model, right? For somebody who is going through that or have gone through that and are trying to get into this space, what would your inputs be? Like should they start? And some simple, some simplified, it's a complex process, and evolves, right, over time. But if you want to look back and tell yourself, okay, this and this would be a good approach to start, what would that be?
And do you mean as a designer?
So you did designing, coding, and then
Hmm.
building, product building, marketing, SEO. Like
Yep.
you have like really diverse set, right? So what got you into that? Because you probably, it was an evolution for you. Okay, you started building your own thing, and then you're like, okay, how do I get into SEO? How do I get into marketing? But if for somebody who has been in a traditional setting, going to
Mm-hmm.
work, and but have this entrepreneurial mindset, right? And for example, let me give you an example. Like Elon Musk, he mentioned if you want to be guided to become an entrepreneur, then it's not the right thing for you. He said
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I'm trying to quote him exact words, but he's meant to, that's what I understood from his lines. So you can't really mentor somebody to become entrepreneur, right? It's something they already are in their thoughts or in the way they think. Or some of them, they love to be in the traditional setting, like follow all the rules and then do exactly how things are. That
Right.
doesn't work for me either. I cannot grow there in that space. I have to have my freedom or experimenting mindset, space to experiment, actually.
Yeah.
So for somebody who is been like or transitioning, what would you suggest if they want to get into technology, right? What's the first place? Is it web designing or SEO or product, or yeah, what would you recommend?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think that, you know, being an entrepreneur is, it's almost like you're unhappy with the situation and you want to make something better, right? And you don't know, maybe you don't know what that is, but you just feel this like uncomfortableness in the situation that you're in. It's funny, I always used to kind of joke that I was always like a horrible employee. Like I'm just like the worst employee because I was never satisfied. And I was working at, my first job was like an in-house designer, and I knew it was just going to be like a stepping stone to the next thing. And I didn't like, I was using it to kind of like make friends and build a network and hone my craft. But I just felt uncomfortable. Like it just felt like that was sitting in a cubicle, in an office was just not for me. And, I worked at a couple of more jobs, a couple of jobs after that in the agency world. And I tried a new thing and realized like that wasn't for me either. And so it takes time, but I think to your point, just you have to you have to build something. You have to do something on the side. And if you're in a job that maybe you're unhappy with, like I would never say quit your job and pursue something new. I think that's too risky in a lot of cases. Um, but you can work nights, you or early mornings, and you can spend time building something on the side that sort of scratches that itch. And so I think like chasing something, whether it's coding, whether it's designing, whether it's, marketing, um, what's great about right now is that there's so many opportunities. You don't even have to start something from scratch. You can actually go, for instance, you could go to a marketplace and buy a newsletter business if you wanted, and take something that has customers or an audience already, and then buy it off someone else and just run with it, and just market it, and keep going with it. And so starting with a blank slate is how it used to be, but that's not the way it's anymore. And so really it's freelancing for clients, maybe just putting yourself out there kind of like we're doing now, or just spending time to build something. I think it's just, you got to get your hands dirty, and you have to start.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. You mentioned about agency world. What's that? Can you explain?
Yeah. So what an agency is it usually uh, is a I worked for like a boutique shop. So it was a smaller shop, but they were very like they had skills in certain disciplines like design, marketing, and so they'd staff this agency with people of that expertise, and they'd have usually a sales team that would go out and find client work, and so you'd get to work on a number of different clients. So like for me, I was doing a bunch of work for Microsoft, Sony, Symantec at the time, and we were doing a lot of website, loyalty programs and microsites and things like that. But it got me to try a lot of things and kind of helped me figure out like what I actually wanted to do in my life as a designer and what I didn't want to do. And so that was really fun because you got to try a lot of different things. Old Navy, you just kind of do a lot of different, like from foods to whatever. And so whatever work came in the door, that's what I was working on. And thankfully I didn't have to go and sell the agency to try to land the work. But the difference between agencies is that you're typically working on a lot of different client projects. Sometimes you're kind of like in charge of one client, but you might be working on a number of them, like I was. In-house designing, you're just working kind of on that one brand, that the company that you work for. And so agency work is kind of like freelancing, where you are working for a multitude of clients if you want to, and you get to kind of try a lot of different things. So, but between in-house, my first job, and agency work, my second and third and fourth, I realized none of those were for me. And so I wanted to build something and have equity and participate in something bigger than myself, but with friends.
Yeah, that's a nice experiment again.
Yeah, right. You kind of have to go through that though to figure out like what you don't like. And
Right.
for me, it was spending the first 6 years of my career just working for someone else. I mean, I do that now too, but like, for something that I didn't have any sort of partnership in or direct like leadership in how the product evolves and everything else.
Yeah. So I have this somewhat similar experience. I feel like whatever you're saying, I can like I have like a other side of the experience that I've gone through. Something the you said you were like horrible employee, right? I felt the same thing when I was working. I was like, I'm not able to work really here. I don't know why. I was enjoying all the social parts and getting to know more like community building, and then I was working in like group projects, and
Hmm.
but actual work was I really didn't enjoy. It was like I had to learn the process of that big corporation, which I was not like. You have to understand the rules, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not really good at that, like following the rules. I myself am not good at that, so it's hard for me to apply that thinking there, because that's what they expect. And I think understanding that took so many years, because I moved from one job to another. I thought, okay, the domain maybe what was not interesting for me. And then I
Hmm.
changed my domain, I changed the companies. But the growth didn't really, I didn't see the growth I would want, or I thought my potential was in. And finally, that uncomfortable feeling which you mentioned, you have to have that uncomfortable feeling to change something, not knowing what to do, what yet, is I think what finally made me, okay, I'll just have my start, take that step, be give myself about 6 months, and then figure out or experiment and see what happens, and then I can always go back and um, get myself a job. But I think it takes a lot of courage, which you have, moving from so many different things to experimenting from different things. So I appreciate that you know, after 6 years you were able to take that bold step. It's a lot of you need a lot of courage for that. It's not easy.
Yeah, no, and I think what's important is that you try to mitigate your risk along the way. So as that first part of my career, as I was working full time, I was still trying to get clients. And so when I went full time freelance, I had enough work to get by, and it wasn't like I was just jumping into, off the deep end. I tried to mitigate my risk, and then I was doing okay after about 3 or 4 months of landing a couple more clients. So yeah, it's important to just you know know when to take risks and when not to.
Yeah, that's a smart move in yeah, just knowing the risk aspect here. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of discussion in today's podcast. I really enjoyed learning. Now I feel like I'll know more about Nate, and more.
Likewise.
Yeah. It's and I look forward to all the different experiment, trial and errors that you do, and your journey of becoming a dad, and that sharing in the podcast and the newsletter. Will you still be publishing newsletters when you take a break, or are you taking a break from that?
I'm trying to think about that right now. Do I need to batch my writing so that I can continue doing that? Because I don't want to miss a week. It's pretty important to me. But I realize like I'm not going to have much time. So I need to either start writing ahead of time and maybe getting like six or seven in the bag, and releasing those on a schedule. But uh, yeah, there's this. He doesn't write a newsletter anymore, but Paul Jarvis talked a lot about. So Paul Jarvis is an entrepreneur and started as a web designer, and his last book was called Company of One. And so he really thinks a lot about building companies, not too big, but more like lifestyle companies that he can run himself with maybe a person or someone else. But he, for his newsletter, his habit was to batch a lot of them. And so he would just write a bunch and have them ready to go, in like months in advance. And he had, I think he had 35,000 people on his subscriber list, writing over a 10-year period, but he never missed a Sunday. And I want to try to achieve something like close to that, but we'll see.
That's amazing. I like that. How many subscribers do you have right now?
Right now it's like 260. So very
That's
small,
great.
but
No, that's still a good number. It's not a small. I in Twitter I was like, somebody asked about how to grow Twitter from zero, and then I did that like last August. I grew from 0 to 128, and it's not a great number. And I put that line, and then Sahil is like, "You, no, that's a great number. Don't say that." I think we have to stay that,
yeah,
not think, we think ourselves like, okay, that's not a good number, but it is a
it
good
is.
number.
You're right. And we compare ourselves to other people probably too much. At least I know I do. And so,
Yes.
but that's,
Yes.
I love this idea of playing the long game, where if I were to do this the next 10, 15, 20 years, like what will it look like? And what can I do to make sure I maintain that consistency and that habit? So sometimes it's about not overwhelming yourself too much and just making sure like it's within reach. I try not to make my newsletters too long because I know I don't want to get burned out. And so, just finding that like, okay, that balance of what can you actually create every week and work on that. So yeah, that's my goal.
Yeah, I have to start newsletter. I'm like so scared because I feel like what if I miss a day, or what if I miss a week, or a few months, and what do I do then? So maybe I have to think like, okay, it's another experiment. I'll do this for like few weeks and see how
Right.
that goes. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If I'm enjoying it, then I'll continue.
Yeah, and it's not
So
black and white. You can just kind of pull back a little bit, just make it, there's nuance in there. And so just tweaking those things, like, for me, maybe during the pregnancy, I'll still get, or after we, have our daughter, like we'll still do the newsletter, but maybe I won't do the audio component, or maybe we won't draw, but maybe it's just the writing, and that'll be like the base, and that'll be a success for me if I could just get it out and do something.
yeah, yeah. And how long are you taking the break right now? A week?
Well, I'm done. I'm actually back working now. So I took 5 days, I believe it was.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
super refreshing. So I
That's amazing. That's awesome. So you can put that in your next. Are you planning to share that later on? Not here, but in your newsletter or in your
You
podcast?
mean just kind of like my experience during the 5 days? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
so. I'll probably journal about it first, just to kind of like get my
Mm.
thoughts out there and see if there's anything worth telling, because there's sometimes it's like, well, is this more journal focused or is this more public focused? And not that I would ever hide really either one, but just does it make a compelling story? And that's sort of like the filter that I try to think about, is like, is this interesting? And so I think I just need a journal about it to figure out like, is it actually interesting? It probably is, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Nate, how do listeners connect with you? I think if they want to know more or subscribe to your newsletter, can you give a Twitter handle or your website so they can
Yeah.
connect?
So my newsletter is planyournext.com, and my Twitter handle is KADLAC. It's Cadlac. It's my last name. And those are the two places you can probably find me best.
Awesome. Yeah. And I love the newsletter. So I highly, highly recommend to subscribe for it and get a lot of value. It's just even little bit of value added over week. It's a lot. It's the compound interest. So we improve so much just getting those little information without actually going and Googling, or we don't even know what to Google. So this is like almost like serendipitous moments in our life. So I really like receiving them. And Nate, thank you so much for being on the show and giving your time and sharing your knowledge. Really enjoyed
Oh my
talking to
gosh.
you.
Thank you so much for having me on. And that, I mean, all those compliments are just makes my heart warm. So I appreciate it all.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe and share the podcast with anyone you think would love to listen. Until next time, take care and stay safe.